I don't know if you guys are aware that this building is actually really, really old. This building has been here since, well, the walls have been here since 1930s. This whole block, actually, Broadway, was called Automobile Row because all of the major manufacturers of cars in the 30s would open up dealerships here. But dealerships weren't what we think of them now. They were these old buildings, like the one right next door over there. It says Franklin Studebaker on the top of it. And the cars would go in there. And if you've been at the Sports Castle where there's other DAODenver events going on, you'll see that there's this big ramp. They used to take these cars all the way up the ramp, all the way to the top floor, and that was their inventory. That was their stock because they didn't have parking lots to store them at. So basically, I was taking an Uber this morning, and the Uber driver says to me, "Hey, did you know that the story about what's in Temple, Denver?" And I said, "What story? I haven't heard about it." And he said, "Well, the story goes that Broadway used to be the widest thoroughfare, so that's why they put all the car dealerships here, so that they can actually drive around. And this building was where they stored the antique, well, they're all antique now, but the cars that were foreign cars. So the Sports Castle was actually built by the Chrysler Company. And this other building over here, the Franklin Studebaker, was, I think, built by Ford. But here in between them was this Jaguar sort of dealership and other imported cars. Well, 1935, Jaguar releases this sort of sports car. And it is one of these cars that, everybody just admires. But they only imported into the United States 50 of them. Actually, if you look it up on the internet, which I did after this guy told me the story, it says they actually only imported 49. So I said, "What happened to the 50th one?" And he says, "Well, there was this race. Basically, the guy came in a Jaguar, and one of these 50 new Jaguars, they only got one here in Denver, and he challenged somebody to a race. And so they're racing down Broadway, and he's winning tremendously. The other guy doesn't even have a chance. He's like in a cranked up Ford or something like that, Model T, who knows." And the guy he's so excited, that he wins this race. He pulls into the Franklin Studebaker building because this wasn't built yet. They were actually just pouring this foundation that you're sitting on right now. And it was wet. It was still wet concrete. And the guy flies over the Studebaker building and lands in the concrete. They were able to save the guy, but they lost the car. And the car just sinks down, and so then they, pour more concrete over it to try and, fill up the space. So, you guys are sitting on, potentially, if the story's true, a 1935 Jaguar. I think they call it the SS100, right? So one of these just sold at auction in 2010 for $1 million. So you guys feel free to dig. Go for it. We'll get you some shovels. But why am I telling you this story? Well, I love stories. I'm really passionate about stories. Like when I say really passionate, I just love hearing stories about the places where I'm going. And what I told you just now would normally be a story if you were at home. But today it's not a story. Today it's an experience because you're here. Because you have a connection to this place right now. And that's what I feel is missing in the world, is a connection to the places that we go. I'll tell you a little bit about me, not much, but I came to America as a Soviet refugee in 1979. My family came here because we were Jewish and we were rejected in the Soviet Union. And thanks to the hard work of the good people here in the United States, we were able to come here as refugees. We came here with no money. They didn't allow us to bring anything from the Soviet Union. So we had to rely on the social services system, which we did until my parents were able to get degrees. They were able to get good jobs. They were able to support the family on their own without having to rely on the social system. So I really have a lot of appreciation and respect for our social system. But at the same time, I feel that people that come here to the United States are still not considered equal citizens even after they earn their citizenship, right? When I was 5 years in here, the first thing my family did was apply for citizenship, like on that day, right? Because we were proud. We were proud to be called Americans. And people say to me every day, what do you think about what's going on in the Ukraine? Are you Russian or are you Ukrainian? Well, the answer is I'm both. I'm ethnically Russian because the Jews populated Russia, but I was born in the Ukraine. I was born in Odessa, Ukraine. So who do I have an allegiance to? No one. America. This is my country because this is the country that gave me opportunity. But nonetheless, there are many people who come to this country, and when they do, they don't speak the language. They don't know the system. They don't necessarily know how the political parties work, because where they come from, it's different. And so what's important to me is develop this mechanism by which people can help other people learn about what's around them. So that if they're just visiting Denver, or perhaps they're moving to Denver permanently to reset their lives, to get more opportunity. They may even be coming from a small town or, not necessarily another country. So what's important here is to understand that I have this background where I really love stories, especially when they relate to something that's around me. And I have this passion to help people learn about the places where they are, regardless of whatever language they learn or whatever language they speak natively. And so what happened one day, when this was right before COVID, my wife and I took our kids. My wife's right there. Hi, Irina. Love you. My wife and I took our kids to Italy, and we started walking around aimlessly one day. And I noticed that there were some Hebrew letters on the door of this building next to our hotel. And I said, what is that? And everybody's like, I don't know. What the hell is that? And I speak Hebrew. I can read Hebrew, but this wasn't Hebrew. I couldn't understand it, right? Because I'm Jewish. You should assume that, no, we don't all speak Hebrew. But I couldn't figure out what it was. And then after a while, I realized that it was Yiddish. It was the language that the Jews spoke prior to the Holocaust specifically, because many of them were situated around Germany. And so this language was basically German with a mix of Russian and a bunch of other Slavic languages. And so that's what was displayed on these buildings, and I was fascinated. And I went down on my phone and I started typing it in, and I started doing this Wikipedia thing, and I'm like walking and typing, and my wife's like, you idiot, you're gonna get hit by a car. And luckily I didn't, but it was really a poor user experience. And so I said to myself, there has to be a better way to do this, right? There's technology that can do this. And so I went out and I looked, and sure enough, there were 50 companies doing exactly what I was thinking I wanted. Audio tours in a geographic location. But they all cost $5. Or they were some sort of app that you had to download that you'd get one tour for $1, and then you could buy more for $50. Or they required that you start in one spot and end up in another. So when you're going the opposite direction, you can't do the tour because it would be backwards. So I said to myself, there must be a better way. And as a technologist, I do code, I do program, I do hack. I said to myself, let me see if there's some tools out there that I can use for this. And I also spoke to a number of people, like a bunch of people who do, audio content, sort of like radio voices, right? And the first guy I spoke to, he said, yeah, I love this idea of walking audio tours. I can help you with this. My fee is $200 an hour. Now, this guy had an awesome voice, face for radio, but awesome voice. And I said, wow, I would love this guy's help. But $200 an hour, that must be what the other guys are paying, and there must be a better solution. So I went on Amazon Web Services and I scanned everything that they do. You know how many services Amazon Web Services has? Like 250. But they have audio synthesis, they have translation, they have transcription, they have mapping. And I'm thinking, hold on, how much is this going to cost? And guess what? Amazon lets you have a good amount of stuff for free. So I just start hacking away at this. And I start trying to find ways to solve this problem. And what I basically did in about a weekend was I said, honey, you won't believe it. I built the system that you can actually take words, text, translate it into 22 languages, synthesize it, and then deliver it to this app. And you're on a map and you give it GPS access and it allows you to hear what's around you. Now, this is user contributed, but it's also developed using artificial intelligence because there's a lot of information out there, right? It's not great, but there's information out there. Wikipedia, it's okay, but it's out there. So what I decided to do was see if other people would like this. I know I like it because I'm interested in stories and I'm interested in the places around me. And I really want to establish that connection with where I am. And so I said, you know what? Let's see if other people like this. And I brought it to a couple of friends. And I also went online and seeked out a couple of different tour guides and things like that. And everyone I brought it to was like, wow, this is great. And they said, well, how much is it going to cost? And so I'm like, oh, okay, I guess I got to start doing math. So let's see, like an hour's worth of audio with the guy that has a great voice is $200 an hour, but you know, it really takes 3 hours to get 1 hour worth of audio. So that's $600. Well, let's see how much the Amazon route costs if we were paying, which we weren't because they give you plenty for free. Well, it turned out that at scale, meaning 1 million users a week using this system, cost in 22 languages, translated and transcribed, and synthesized into voice, text-to-speech, cost $6 an hour. That's a factor of 100x. And I said, well, okay, that's great. It's much cheaper, so we can do it, right? But how are we going to pay for it? Well, how does Web 2 pay for everything? Advertising, right? If you're not paying for the product, you are the product. And so what I realized was, well, there's an opportunity here to really change that model, but also use what this Web 2 ecosystem is already used to in paying for radio advertising that is not at all locally targeted and not at all geographically focused and not even demographically focused. We can actually give them much more targeted advertising opportunities. And by doing that, we can make this whole system free. Was anyone here to see Max Lenderman yesterday? No? Yes. Okay. He's an ad whiz. He's been in the advertising business for a while. And what he spoke about yesterday, and I very much recommend that you take the time after today, to go to our YouTube channel and review that presentation. But it was about how to connect Web 2 to Web 3, and specifically the title was What Brands Want and What DAOs Get. And the problem is that we're speaking different languages. DAOs are talking about we can do everything as a community. We don't need to hire people. We don't need to hire professionals. We don't need to raise all this funding from venture capitalists. We could have the community chip in, and we can do this all as a community. Well, that's awesome. But brands do not understand this concept. Everything that they do and the agencies that represent them is focused on how do we get this in front of more eyeballs, which is totally the wrong way to look at it, because you shouldn't care about eyeballs. You should care about interactions. You should care about engagement. Well, tell me, what's more engaging than walking around a neighborhood and hearing about all of the things that are around you? What's more engaging than being in front of the place or sitting on the concrete where the car actually sank, right? So what you see up here are 3 links. Link number 1 is our Discord server. Freshly minted, just put it up, just our core team is on there, and we'd love for you to join. But don't do that if you're not going to contribute, okay? Because in order for the system to work, everybody has to contribute. Everybody has to be part of it. You can listen to the tours, but add some of your own. And every story has value. So if you grew up on a farm in Kentucky and there's nothing around for miles except for that farmhouse that you grew up on, I will pay good money to go and hear your story because that is what interests me. Number 2 is our test flight. If anybody knows what a test flight is, does anybody know what a test flight is? Okay, not a lot of Web 2 people here. Test flight is a mechanism on Apple devices that allows you to download an app and test it before it goes public. And if you do own an Apple device, you should scan that second code, download it, walk upstairs and walk through those back doors, because in the alley between this building and the next one, there's an art gallery, an outdoor graffiti mural art gallery. And I guarantee that it's probably, in my opinion it is, and it might be in yours, better than many of the art galleries that we walk into in a building. Now, we don't have all of those art pieces explained, but the goal of what we're doing is to be able to create those kinds of experiences where you can walk around a neighborhood and see the art and hear the artist tell their story, or hear a transcribed, translated, synthesized version in your own language, or you can contribute that story about the art. So that's my ask for you. If you don't have an iPhone, what the hell are you thinking? Go out and get an iPhone. Everybody has an iPhone. But number 3 is our light paper. And this explains how we set up our ecosystem and who gets what. So people that contribute get tokens. Tokens can be used by advertisers to advertise. You guys see what's going on there? We don't need funding. We don't need venture capital. What we need is community. And we need to prove that by doing it this way, it's equitable for the people that create the content. Because when they create the content, they earn the tokens. And when they earn the tokens, they are uniquely able to, in the marketplace, exchange those tokens for some other kind of equitable coin or stable coin or Ethereum or Cardano or something else through these decentralized exchanges. So that's what I want you to understand, because there are a lot of people who are in here and who were in here yesterday and they were just scratching their heads. I don't get how this all works. And Max was talking about Web 2 and Web 3, and they're saying, why would we even want to work with the brands? What the hell can they offer us? Well, they've got billions of dollars in advertising spend that they haven't spent yet. And they'd be willing to buy your coins. But you know who else will? That mom and pop shop on the corner that's selling pizza, that hasn't advertised in 20 years because they haven't had a medium to do that except for the yellow pages. And when people stopped advertising in the yellow pages, they went to where? Internet, Google AdWords, right? Well, Google AdWords really starts to get expensive as the market gets saturated, which is by design. They want the pay-per-click revenue to go up, and in order to do that, the pay-per-click costs have to go up. But these mom and pop shops can't spend $10 for one customer. That doesn't make any sense to them. The lawyers can. The lawyers can spend $100 per customer. The people who sell private aviation, I don't know if you know how much it costs, but it's like $100 a click. A click, but they make their money back, no problem. But for mom and pop shops, it just doesn't make sense. Well, what if I told these mom and pop shops that you can contribute content and earn tokens, and then you can take those tokens and you can get advertising for yourself, but you're targeting only people within 3 blocks. And you're targeting only people that we know haven't eaten because they haven't stopped, they've been walking around. And you can target people in their specific language. Because if you're walking around in Italy, but you're listening to an English tour, then Coca-Cola can teach you how to ask for a Coke in Italian. And the local shop can teach you how to ask for their special in your language. So this is where we're going with the tokenomics of ListenUp. And the tokenomic system is what we call the Meow DAO, which I wrote a paper on as well, and it's online.